Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the core ideas from a series of philosophical talks about the mystic Kabir's path of love. It's really a journey about finding our way back to something absolutely essential.
So right off the bat, the source material hits us with this powerful line from Kabir. And this really becomes the central metaphor for everything we're talking about today. This idea of the wanderer searching for their home. As you'll see, we're not talking about a physical place, but something much, much deeper.
And that's the big question, isn't it? The one the source material really sets out to answer. We're going to follow this metaphorical journey from a state of being lost, a wanderer, all the way to what the text calls home. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first, the source draws a really important line in the sand. Home isn't a physical building. It's not a place with four walls and a roof. It's a state of being, a state of authentic, true union with life itself. And to really hammer this point home, there's this fascinating little story in the source. It talks about a mystic who said he could literally smell the difference between a house and a home. He said a house is just a structure, a place that can actually kill your spirit. But a real home? Well, that's where you can truly, truly live and flourish. So, if home is where we're all trying to get, why do so many of us feel so lost? Well, the text argues it's because the wanderer, that's us, gets completely sidetracked on what it calls false paths, mistaking them for the real deal.
And here is a perfect example of one of those false paths. The story goes, there's this famous scholar who had memorized the entire Rig Veda, a huge, ancient, sacred text. But when the sage quoted a line from it, without saying where it was from, the scholar just said, "Nope, never heard of it."
And that right there, that's the whole point. The scholar had intellectual knowledge. He was basically a walking hard drive packed with data, but he was missing that experiential knowing, that direct, personal feeling of the truth. He knew about the words, but he didn't really know them.
And this idea goes way beyond just memorizing texts. It's a critique of any kind of imitation. The source makes this really sharp distinction, for example, between an imitative Christian who just repeats words and the authentic Christ who actually lived the truth. The argument is, if you're just following along without your own personal realization, you're just a shadow of the real thing.
So, what does this journey even look like? The source actually breaks it down into 3 stages. First, there's the jungle. That's the state of just conforming, of being spiritually asleep. Then you enter the forest. This is when you start searching, questioning, dreaming. And finally, you arrive at home, which is the state of being fully awake and aware.
Okay, so we've talked about the dead ends, the false paths of borrowed knowledge and imitation. So what is the way home? Well, the text presents Kabir's solution, the true path of love and celebration. And get this path isn't about escaping life. It's about diving headfirst into it. The source says truth is an explosion of love. It's not something you find by renouncing the world and living alone. No, it says that our relationships, our communities, that's what makes us rich. Solitude, it argues, just turns the soul into a desert. There's this fantastic story that just perfectly captures this idea. So picture this, the famous philosopher George Santayana. He's at Harvard giving a lecture to a jam-packed hall. This is the very definition of the intellectual world. And right in the middle of a sentence, he looks out the window and sees a flower blooming. He just stops, picks up his hat, and says this. And then he walked out. He chose the real direct experience of life, his appointment with April, over just talking about it. That's the path of celebration in a nutshell.
So where does this path lead? Well, according to the source, the goal isn't really a final destination. It's more about developing a completely new way of seeing the world around you.
And a huge piece of this new vision is a concept called choiceless awareness. It's this state where you start to see that opposites are really just 2 sides of the same coin. Think about it. You can't have a mountain peak without a valley, right? They're one and the same thing. And once you really, truly get that, once you see that trying to grab happiness will always bring unhappiness with it, or that clinging to life is what creates the fear of death, then that frantic need to always choose one and reject the other, it just kind of melts away. And what's left is this incredible sense of peace. So this all leads us to the final, ultimate task. The source really frames this entire journey, from the jungle, through the forest, all the way home, as one simple but incredibly profound action, waking up from a dream that you don't even know you're in. And to really drive this point home, the source uses this short, powerful story from the writer Jorge Luis Borges.
And it basically wraps up the entire path we've been talking about into a single mind-bending moment.
So get this, a man has been running from his mortal enemy his entire life, and now he's finally cornered. He's in his own house, and his enemy is standing over him, ready to end it all. There is absolutely no way out. The end is certain.
He pleads, he argues, he tries every logical reason to stay alive, but nothing works. The enemy just looks at him and says, "Your arguments are only stratagems of your terror. There is nothing you can do now." It's a moment of absolute, crushing hopelessness.
But then, right at that final moment, when all hope is gone, the man says, "Actually, there is one thing I can do." And the enemy, curious, asks him what on earth that could be.
And what the man says next is the stunning twist. He says, "Wake up." And he did. The entire lifelong conflict, the enemy, the fear, the chase, the impending death, all of it was just a dream. The only real action he ever needed to take was simply to wake up.
And that, really, is the ultimate takeaway here. The suggestion is that maybe, just maybe, all of our own struggles, our own frantic choices and false paths are part of a dream. And so the Source leaves all of us with one final provocative question to think about.